Hello viewers, I went on Gran Turismo 7 this week and I found this, the Alsace Village Reverse Circuit. I mean, just look at it. What even is that track? In a recent video, I dubbed it the weirdest track in the game, and I think that is a title I will still give to it. And there's even a swan guarding the local lake, just for good measure. But with that said, we move into a couple of time trial sessions here. Now, I actually think that this track, it is a bit weird, as you can probably see, but I actually really think it's actually a much better circuit than it's often given credit for. And after doing a fair amount of races around it, I really got into a good flow. There are a couple of really interesting corners like this one, the massively banked long left-hander, and you know, the track is very wide, you have to get on the power quite a lot, and it's actually well suited to the Group 3 cars here. So we set a 150.8 and that puts us into our first race. Now, this race started off in a very entertaining manner. We're going to begin it in 8th place, but watch this guys. This is the first recorded case of a quadruple old switcheroo. Boom, we're going to switch back on the power, get the drive off the corner, and look at that. 8th to 4th in pretty much one turn. The almighty old switcheroo like you have never seen it before, and that's 4 positions very handily gained. So that was quite an entertaining start to the race, quite an interesting scenario to kick it off. Now I found myself catching up with this Italian who's driving the Mitsubishi Lancer, and they made a mistake here into the first corner, went a little bit wide and then just cut the corner a tiny bit too much. It unsettled the car. They get poor drive off the turn, and we're going to get another overtake in that part of the circuit up into 3rd. And I was really gaining on this Czech driver for 2nd place with 1 lap to go. Now the leader did a 151.2, I then did a 51.3, so my pace was at least on par with the person in the lead of the race, which I was happy about. And we were gaining on this Czech driver with less than a lap left to go now, and he had this very long right-hander, which is very easy to get carried away and get on the power too soon, which I think the Czech driver has done, going a little bit wide on the exit on the second half of that turn. And then you had this long left, get on the power quite early because it leads out onto this straight, which is, I'm pretty sure, the fastest section of the circuit. And here we were building up to a potential overtake in the final corner of the final lap. You can see the guy in front definitely thought there was potential there, covering it off. I wasn't able to get the old switcheroo on this occasion to get 2nd, and it ultimately ended up being a 3rd. Now I wanted to watch the #1 time in the world just to give you a demonstration of what this track looks like at true speed. Now here this guy gets a really good run up this hill, and I think exit speed is very crucial around this track, as is, I mean, speed in general, of course. I mean, that goes without saying really, it's kind of obvious. But exit speed, really crucial, and getting on the power early. As you can tell, the track is very wide. It's one of the widest tracks in the game, and therefore getting on the accelerator nice and early really does pay dividends around here. As you then wind round to the next corner, you're carrying a lot of speed onto the next straight by doing so. And again here, maximising the track width on the curb, carrying good speed. This left-hander, as it drops down, again banked and wide, therefore you can carry a lot of speed and get on the power nice and early. It was now my turn to try to replicate that the best I could. That was a very good lap time into the 48, and my aim really was to try to get at least just a 49. I decided to follow this ghost, which was the ghost of a 1 minute 50.0. So if I were to beat it, I would be into the 149s. And already we've lost, you know, a couple of tenths here, drifting a little bit wide. But, you know, this is the process of getting faster on any given circuit, in any given car, just really following a ghost which is a little bit quicker than you, and just seeing where you're losing time. Here you see I missed the apex, don't get a good exit, and the ghost pulls away by a couple of car lengths. So that's quite clear to me that that corner was not getting it right. That lap was a 150.9, 1/10 away from my personal best. But here I was going to try and take a nicer line through this left-hander to get a better exit. About the same, I would say, as I was on the previous lap. Let's see if we can get this corner better. Just grazing the curb on the inside. That was definitely an improvement on the last lap. We could still go better. 150.2 as we crossed the line there. We also did another 150.2. This lap about to come up is a 150.1. So it was slowly improving. We're going in the right direction. And this lap, well, hopefully it could be a 149. If we could just get a much better exit. Carrying the speed through, just firing the car in nice and early. Carrying the speed, and as you can see, ahead of the Ghost this time rather than behind it. Carry the brake a little bit too deep there. Get on the power quite early, but we have lost a car length or two against the Ghost through that turn. Through this left, should be flat. Braking just before the curb on the right. Can we get into this curb on the inside? Yes, onto the power. And you see, that was a good line. We managed to keep up with the Ghost this time around. And we're probably about 1/10 down on it at this point. And we're going to take a nice narrow line, being patient mid-turn before getting on the power once again. And then dropping down into this left-hander, which is crucial because it leads out onto this straight, which is the fastest section of the track. And I'm still ahead of the Ghost. This is good. And I'm nearly 2/10 up on a 150.1. So this should be a 149 if I can get this final corner correct. Braking just before the curb on the right. And pretty much trail braking in towards the apex to really maximise the entry. Compromises the exit slightly, but still overall better, quarter of a second up. It's a 49.8, and that's what I was aiming for. That put me 43rd in the world at the time of doing it, and second on the grid for this race. Up against the guy in the lead here was top 20, I do believe, at the time of this race. And so it was not going to be an easy race to try to keep up with this guy, but I did have the benefit of the slipstream, and you know, sometimes it is easier to follow compared to being in front. But this guy was very quick. I mean, he, as I said, top 20 in the world. It wasn't going to be an easy race. I made a bit of a hash of this corner, as you can see, not carrying enough speed through the middle section of the turn, and as a result the Italian driving away, gaining a couple of tenths on the exit. At the end of lap number 3, you see the gap here, 1.1 seconds, and that is the full extent of the gap. So it was a really good battle. I would say this guy was a couple of tenths quicker, although I did have the faster lap, so I was, I guess, slightly less consistent. Now, you see I did begin to reel him back in slightly. So this was a really interesting battle. It's one of those ones where you're both driving on the limit, it's really close, ultimately there's no overtaking, and you both finish in the same order. Now, this time, the Italian was not present, and so I was on pole position. This one would be a case of, well, quite an easy win, pretty much. I didn't really need to show you too much. Easily winning by 2.5 seconds on that occasion. So what I thought I'd do is try something a little bit risky, and try driving something that isn't the Nissan GTR, in the form of the BMW M6. Now, no idea how good this car is around this track, but let's give it a go and see what we can do. Our current fastest time in the GTR being the 149.8. So if I can get anywhere towards that, then I know I'm in good shape for the upcoming race. Now, I knew that, you know, the Nissan GTR has really good straight line speed, so I would be a bit of a sitting duck at some parts of the circuit. But if I could have a good sequence of corners through the mid-section at least, particularly through this fast sweeping section of corners, then it might be okay. I might be able to fight off the Nissan GTRs from behind. And I did notice the M6, again, not good straight line speed, but it was a little bit understeery in some of the slow corners, but it was okay through the medium and high speed corners, I noticed. 51.3, that's 1.5 seconds off the GTR fastest time, then improving to a 50.5. So I would say after doing those couple of laps that this car may be at least 3 or 4 tenths off per lap, maybe half a second. And here we go then, the BMW M6 up against the horde of Nissan GTRs. Can I keep them at bay? This is going to be difficult, but it's a good challenge to try to do this. Let's see if we can do it. Now, by this point in the recording session, I'd probably done a good 20-25 laps around this track, and therefore I was kind of really getting into a good rhythm. And I think this track is one of those tracks where you can really get into a very nice flow. The corners in this kind of car, Group 3, has good speed, and you really do get a nice sort of rhythm going around this circuit. The corners really do flow one after the other, and in many ways it feels like a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest, especially when you have this long banked left-hander coming up. It's a really fun type of corner to get right. You really have to throw it in, bit of brake, then back on the power. The car really grips amazingly through there. It really does feel good when you get it dead right. And then this kind of corner as well, just breathing mid corner, back on the power, running the full extent of the track. Could have gotten the power a little bit earlier, but it wasn't too bad. Under the Alsace Village sign, braking just before the curb on the right, and we're doing a good job so far. Solid lap, beginning to edge away slightly from the guy behind, but this is where this car is weak. We come onto this straight 6/10 ahead, but as we head into the braking zone, that lead is going to somewhat diminish to about 4/10. We've lost maybe 2/10 through that final section of the lap, and therefore I'm going to have to be really careful. If the car behind gets close on that section of the circuit, there's a very good chance I could lose the position. So I really need to do the job before we get there. I need to pull away as much as possible before we get to that section of the track. Dropping downhill, this is a very fun corner. Get the car in early, back on the power by the time you get to the curb, maximising the track width. This time around, 1.1 seconds in front, so I didn't really have to worry about being overtaken. But by lap 4, you can see TX3 Levicious there actually streams over on Twitch. He managed to catch me back up, and I set fairly consistent laps in the low 51s, but you know, I should ideally be getting into the 50s. At least I would be in the Nissan GTR, and therefore it became quite a close finish here. As you can see, just very, very ominous when you look behind to see a car within 0.3 of a second. You know that they are poised and ready to go for that overtaking manoeuvre when the opportunity arises. Still not close enough yet to go for the move. I just have to really keep my cool and have a good couple of corners here before we lead out onto that final straight, which is so crucial to the lap time, but also to this race result. Onto the power as early as possible, making the full use of the track and the banking of the turn. And this one's going to be fairly close, 0.4 ahead, trying to break the toe the best I can. And as we head towards the corner, he is gaining. And as you can see on the radar, he does kind of go for the move, but thankfully wasn't close enough to fully complete it. And ultimately, I do cross the line to win the race in something that isn't the Nissan GTR. Although for the next one, I improved my lap time, jumped back into the Nissan GTR. By this point, a lot more faster players were jumping online, and it was going to be even more difficult to win. This one was a really interesting start. Look at the top two here. Thunder's in the lead. I think his lap time, his qualifying time was top 10 in the world. So we knew that it was very much up to a very difficult challenge here. But coming downhill, it's just a really weird moment between us all, as there's a bit of contact once, twice, 3 times. Thunder's drops loads of positions, and suddenly I find myself in P2 with a bit of front bumper damage, but we continue nevertheless and try to pull away. So that was our main obstacle to winning this race out of the race so far. Thunder's getting wiped out ultimately and dropping right down the order. And you know, if you got someone in the top 10 turns up in the race, it's always going to be hard to beat them. And you know, if they crash on the first lap, then that does help. But this is going to be a really close race. As you can see, the car behind, time killer, very, very close indeed. So we have the issue really of trying to move forward and make this overtaking manoeuvre whilst also defending from the car behind. And I think the best defence is offence, just to try to go as fast as possible, try to ideally pull away and extend a gap to that car behind. Now this track is really interesting because I think there's so many overtaking opportunities around it, and this run into the final corners tended to be the best place to go for a move. And to be fair, this was quite a weak defence. It didn't really fight that one too hard. Left the space open on the inside. I parked it on the apex to really make sure there was not an old switcheroo coming. There was a bit of contact, almost lost control of the car. As we crossed the line to begin the second lap, I begin it in the lead of the race. And this is where you kind of go into time trial mode, where you almost forget about the cars behind. As you can see, they're really beginning to fight quite hard now. And you really just try to knuckle down and try to set the best couple of laps you can to really extend that gap the best of my ability. So this is where you really get into that, you know, that zen flow state, if that's one way to put it. You really begin to pull away, and I really began to enjoy this circuit. And as I said, lots of overtaking manoeuvres possible around here because there are so many corners and the track is so wide, and I think it's that track width that really lends itself to this track being good for overtaking. Ultimately here, finishing 3 seconds to the good and winning my 87th race on the game. So quite pleasing. We won our 88th race not long after that. And we wanted to ask the question, of course, how does Scott Speed, the fastest American, well, actually the fastest driver of all time, contend with this race in this, the American machine? Well, it's not American, it's actually Japanese, but it's got a beautiful American livery. So let's see what we can do then. Starting 15th on the grid. Frustratingly, it starts you around the final corner, so you don't really get a good launch into the race. But with 4 laps to go, we have maybe 7.5 minutes to try to overtake as many cars as we can. Can we do the double switcheroo here up against the Honda? And then the Beetle, we actually get a really nice exit, and up this hill here, that corner exit was so crucial to lap time, and as you can see also positions, and as I mentioned earlier, corner exit speed was really important here, but especially on the exit of that turn. A couple of cars facing the wrong way here, one car on the right slowing down, and therefore we're going to gain 4 positions already, and that's often the case when you start at the back. You're just going to try and avoid incidents. Another car stricken there, as we're going to move up into 10th, and proving to be quite an easy track to get some overtakes done. There's another one, courtesy, well, I suppose really, of cars just crashing. It's always easy to overtake a crashed car. You don't really have to do too much to do that. Now up to 9th, trying to catch up with the guys in front. We're going to whip it forward slightly here. You see the Porsche in front going a little bit too wide, rejoins, and we almost collide. Very close indeed. Thankfully, not quite enough to have a crash. Therefore we move up into 8th. At the beginning of the second lap, trying to catch up here with the Brazilian for 7th place. And you can see here the difference in lines and smoothness through that corner, as I get a much better run coming up the hill. Then as we go down the other side, he decides to go defensive, so we can potentially get a move done on the exit here. And this was really good racing between the two of us, I think. Going side by side into the left-hand hairpin, very slow corner this one, and giving each other space on the exit. A tiny bit of contact there maybe, but I think it was really good racing, respect shown, space given, and we always like to see that. Into the Banks corner, and just going to slot in ahead, very very close, a little bit wider to give him the space. But there we go, moving up into 7th position, trying to catch up with I'm 2 OP. Actually goes a little bit wide there, as do I on the exit, almost losing control of the car, but keeping it all together to try to continue and go on our quest for 6th place, which is within arm's reach here, just in front of us. As we're going to move forward through this long right-hander, being patient mid-turn, getting your inside wheels within that white line, and then back over to the right to set yourself up nicely for this left-hander. Again, crucial corner this, on the power nice and early as we go onto this straight. Now the Mustang was actually really good in a straight line. I wasn't really able to overhaul them and easily sail by as you would with a lot of other cars, but we do I think you were sending me some sort of code here by braking in some weird, it was like an SOS pattern, and I managed to slip up the inside in towards the first corner and claim 6th place. Beautiful stuff indeed. Driving up the hill, looking for P5 now, dropping down. Very nice corner, that one, when you get it right. Very satisfying. It actually goes defensive here, does Minute Maid in the white car. I'm going to try and overhaul him. Where are we going to be able to do this? Not quite close enough to really send up the inside into the bank's corner. So all we can do is focus on getting a good exit and maybe getting the job done slightly later on in this lap. We are going to gain through the exit here for the second half of the corner. Not close enough to go for the move here. So again, just swarming across the back end of this car, just waiting for the opportunity to arise. Is it going to arise here? We're going to go for a mini switch back, and I'm not quite able. I think I touched his rear quarter panel. He goes a little bit wide there, but I think nothing doing really. So we just continue, and we're in 5th. Make that 4th as we've got a car spinning and recovering from some sort of collision or crash. And then we have the Atenza. I managed to catch up with this guy on the final lap, and always again respect to anyone who's not using the GTR, so not me, don't respect me, but Scott Speed can kind of do what he likes, I guess. And they're coming up towards the final corner, looking for the move. Final lap, final turn, can we get it done? It goes a little bit wide, looking for the switcheroo. Doesn't quite happen. I don't think I could have pulled that off without contact, so we back out. And that was that. Finishing 4th, almost on the podium from 15th on the grid. But in the end, a really fun race. And to be fair, I think Alsace Reverse, slightly underrated circuit. For me, it's up there. I actually really enjoy it. And I want to know your thoughts. Do you like it? Or actually, you know, is it F tier for you? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Get yourself subscribed, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.